It was one of those stiflingly hot July afternoons in Fairwood Crest, the kind of neighborhood that prided itself on good fences making good neighbors. Or rather, on using fences and HOA regulations to disguise the rot beneath all that polished suburban perfection. I had just returned from a 14-hour shift at the precinct, paperwork, a minor domestic disturbance, and overseeing two rookie officers, and all I wanted was to unload my groceries, take a long shower, and maybe enjoy a cold drink on my back porch. I pulled in the driveway of my modest but well-kept two-story home, nestled neatly between two larger, whiter ones. The kind with overly manicured lawns, decorative flags, and security cameras on every corner. My place? Clean, minimal, quiet. I liked it that way. As I stepped out of my unmarked SUV, dressed still in my uniform pants but now wearing a plain black t-shirt, badge tucked away, sidearm holstered discreetly at my waist, I noticed him out of the corner of my eye. A woman and a young man, standing two houses down, both already watching me like I'd stepped onto the wrong side of a movie set. She was exactly what you'd imagine. Platinum-dyed bob haircut stiff with hairspray, oversized sunglasses, wearing a white tennis outfit that hadn't seen a cord in years. Her son, a tall, broad-shouldered man, maybe mid-20s, wore a flat-brimmed cap, sunglasses, and a smirk that suggested he hadn't worked a day in his life. I started unloading groceries, milk, eggs, some produce, a rotisserie chicken. That's when I heard it, the telltale cadence of entitlement approaching from behind. "Excuse me," the woman called, her voice sharp, practiced. "Hi there. Can I help you with something?" I turned slowly, a polite but reserved smile on my face. "No, ma'am. Just bringing in groceries." She didn't flinch. Her son, now beside her, crossed his arms. "You new here?" "Been here 6 months," I replied. "Don't think we've met." "I'm Karen Whitehall," she said, extending a hand she clearly didn't expect me to take. "Head of the HOA committee. And this is my son, Brandon. He lives with me." For now, Brandon didn't offer a handshake, just stared. "Good to meet you," I said neutrally, turning back to grab another bag. "Thing is," she continued, stepping forward slightly, "we have a little tradition in the neighborhood. New neighbors share a welcome package. You know, some wine, maybe a lasagna. Or, if you've just been shopping, perhaps a few items for the community pantry. Very popular with the neighbors." I raised an eyebrow. "I haven't heard of that one. Don't recall anything like that in the HOA bylaws." Brandon spoke for the first time. "It's not written down, man. It's just what decent folks do around here. Especially people like you, wanting to fit in and all." There it was. People like me. I stood a little straighter. "Well, I'm all for generosity, but these groceries are for my family. Maybe next time." Karen's lips thinned. "I see. So you're not interested in participating in the community?" "I'm interested in mutual respect," I said calmly, "and in being left alone after a long shift." Brandon stepped forward. "What, you too good to share? Or just trying to act tough?" He was trying to puff up, playing alpha. "You know, we've had problems with certain types moving in lately." I felt my jaw tighten, not at the insult, but at the predictability. Karen gasped theatrically. "Brandon, don't be rude." He scoffed. "Whatever. This dude knows what's up. Probably used to getting handouts anyway." That's when I heard it, the creaking gate of outrage swinging fully open. I slowly set down the bag I was holding. I turned to face them squarely, my expression unchanged. "You sure you want to finish that sentence, son?" "Son." Brandon's voice cracked slightly. Karen stepped between us. "Okay, I think we're done here. You're being aggressive. I don't feel safe. In fact," she pulled out her phone, "I think I should call the police." I stared at her, incredulous. "Ma'am, are you seriously calling the cops because I wouldn't give you my groceries?" Karen lifted the phone, dialing. "Because you're being hostile and confrontational in a neighborhood with children. I'm doing what any responsible resident would do." Brandon smirked again, arms folded. I waited patiently. Let her go through with it. She spoke to dispatch, dramatic, breathless. "Yes, I'm at 42, Fairview Lane. There's a man outside my home being aggressive and threatening. He looks dangerous. I don't know if he has a weapon, but he's refusing to leave and intimidating my son." I could hear the dispatcher on the other end asking for details. Karen lowered her voice and turned away slightly. Yes, African American, tall, muscular build. He said something threatening about my son. I feel very unsafe. Brandon's grin widened. I just leaned against my SUV and waited. Karen hung up, triumphant. They'll be here in 5 minutes. Great, I said. Can't wait to meet them. She frowned at my calmness. You'll be sorry you didn't cooperate. Wouldn't be the first time someone tried to make me sorry for not bowing to intimidation. Brandon looked less sure now. Yo, you gonna run or something? Run. I laughed softly. Why would I do that? He squinted. What do you mean? That's when a patrol car rolled up. I watched as the cruiser pulled into the cul-de-sac. Lights off, but urgency in the driver's posture. A young officer stepped out. Officer Riley, one of my newest recruits. His eyes scanned the scene and landed on me. Confusion, then recognition, then panic. He approached slowly. Chief. Karen's head snapped toward him. Chief. Chief of what? Officer Riley cleared his throat. Chief Anderson, sir. Are you okay? Karen's mouth fell open. I pushed off the SUV and nodded. I'm fine, Riley. Just a little misunderstanding with the neighbors. Riley looked between me and the stunned faces of Karen and Brandon. They said you were threatening them? I refused to hand over my groceries, I said flatly. Riley blinked. Seriously? Brandon took a step back. Wait, Chief. You're the police chief. That's right, I said, stepping forward just enough to remind him who exactly he'd been talking to. Karen was pale now, mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. I suggest, I continued, that you be very careful how you use 911 in the future. False reports carry legal consequences. Karen stammered. I didn't know. You didn't say you. I didn't need to say, I said. Because it shouldn't matter. You shouldn't be calling the police because someone told your son to back off. She tried to pivot. It was just a misunderstanding. No, I said firmly. It wasn't. You called the cops because I'm black. You thought you could weaponize fear and lies to humiliate a stranger who wouldn't submit to your entitled little kingdom. And you were wrong. Brandon looked like he wanted to evaporate. I turned to Officer Riley. Thanks for responding. I'll file a report later. For now, I think our neighbors have some thinking to do. Riley nodded, looking equal parts awkward and impressed. I turned back to my groceries, lifted the last bag, and calmly walked into my house, leaving behind 2 stunned faces and the delicious weight of justice served cold. You'd think that after getting publicly embarrassed in front of an officer and finding out that the man her son had racially profiled and insulted was actually the town's police chief, Karen Whitehall might have learned to keep a low profile, maybe even apologize. But this wasn't a woman interested in humility or reflection. No, Karen doubled down. The very next morning, I found a flyer on my windshield. Printed in bold Comic Sans, yes, Comic Sans, was the heading. HOA neighborhood alert. Aggressive new resident causes incident. It went on to detail an unprovoked altercation with a concerning individual, and though it didn't name me directly, it described a muscular man who claims to work in law enforcement and warned neighbors to report any suspicious behavior immediately. It ended with a suggestion that we consider forming a neighborhood safety watch. The kicker? Sign at the bottom, Karen Whitehall, HOA's safety chair, interim. I laughed as I read it. She was trying to spin the story, turn her humiliation into a power play, and worse, paint me as the threat. Later that day, at the station, I mentioned it to Officer Riley and a few others. They rolled their eyes in sync. She's been doing that kind of thing for years, Riley said. There's always some suspicious person to watch out for. Mostly just people who don't look like her. Ignore her, Officer Tasha said. Everyone sees through it. I nodded, but deep down I knew it wasn't quite that simple. The problem with people like Karen wasn't just that they were loud. It was that their lies had a way of sticking, especially when they were backed by wealth, status, or a whisper campaign dressed up as concern. That week, things got interesting. First, I noticed more sideways glances during my jogs through the neighborhood. Kids who had waved before now looked unsure. One father across the street pulled his daughter inside when I passed. Then, during a town hall hosted at the community center, Karen made her move. The meeting was supposed to be about street repairs and new recycling bins. But halfway through, Karen stood and cleared her throat loudly enough to silence the room. "Before we move on," she said, projecting from her diaphragm like she was starring in a dinner theater production of To Kill a Mockingbird, "I'd like to bring up something of deep concern to me, and I believe, to many of you." Whispers started immediately. "I won't name names," she continued, "but there are individuals who have moved into our community who do not share our values, who behave aggressively when confronted about basic neighborhood courtesy, and who misuse their positions of power to intimidate long-standing residents." She cast a pointed glance in my direction. I just leaned back, watching the performance. "There are reports," she added, voice trembling slightly, "that these individuals may be surveilling our homes, that they may be carrying weapons, that they are dangerous." "Karen," I said calmly from the back, "you're talking about me. You should say it." The room turned. Some neighbors looked at her, others at me. A few were clearly uncomfortable. Karen flushed. "Well, if the shoe fits. I'm the police chief," I said. "You called 911 on me because I wouldn't give your son my groceries. Your son, who called me names and demanded food like a robber wearing flip-flops." Shall I continue? The silence was thick now. Karen opened her mouth to respond, but I stood up slowly. "Let's get something straight," I said, my voice steady. "I moved here because I wanted peace. I protect and serve this entire community, including you. But I won't be painted as a threat in my own neighborhood, not by someone who can't control her temper or her son." I didn't wait for applause or argument. I just walked out. But the fallout didn't stop there. A few days later, I got a call from City Hall. The mayor wanted to see me. I arrived at his office to find him already pacing. "Chief Anderson," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "There's some chatter." "About Karen?" I asked. He sighed. "About perceptions. I know the situation. I know she's spinning this. But you're in a high-visibility role now. Some board members are wondering if you might consider moving out of that neighborhood. For optics." I stared at him. "You want me to move because of her lies?" He raised a hand. "Not officially. Just consider it. There are other communities. I chose the house," I said. "Paid for it myself. Served this town for 20 years. I'm not going anywhere." The mayor nodded, but I saw the tension in his face. He was afraid Karen's version of the story might stick. And it might have, if not for what happened next. Brandon. Turns out, Karen's son wasn't just entitled. He was also not very bright. 2 teenagers down the block had installed a Ring camera for their dad's birthday. It caught Brandon just days after our incident, throwing eggs at my house in the dead of night. He'd whispered slurs while doing it, and then, because fate has a sense of humor, he tripped over a garden gnome and fell face-first into the flower bed. The footage went viral in our local Facebook group. Within hours, the comment section lit up. "Wait, is that Brandon Whitehall? Didn't Karen say he was the victim? Why is he vandalizing the police chief's house? Guess the HOA forgot to enforce that rule." I didn't have to say a word. The neighborhood turned on them themselves. By that weekend, I noticed something different. The same father who had pulled his daughter inside now waved from his porch. Another neighbor brought over a plate of cookies just because. And at Sunday's block party, which Karen did not attend, I was approached by 2 board members from the HOA. "We wanted to apologize," the woman said. "We didn't realize how toxic she's been, and we're discussing removing her from her position." "She's been in power too long," the man added. "She doesn't represent this community." I nodded politely, but didn't gloat, because the truth was I hadn't done anything but stand my ground. And in a place like this, where gossip was a currency and perception shaped reality, that had been enough. A week later, I got a letter. Typed. Anonymous. No return address. "You think you've won. You haven't. I've lived here for 20 years, and I'll outlast you. People like you always think you're safe until you're not." No signature, but I didn't need one. Karen was wounded and dangerous, but I wasn't afraid. I had seen much worse. I had been through wars, literal and political. This was just another bully, throwing a tantrum because the system she'd weaponized her whole life wasn't working for her anymore. But still, I reported it, filed it away. People like her weren't above escalating. Meanwhile, something else happened. A town blogger named Jenna, smart, mid-30s, and one of the more outspoken members of the community reached out. "I'm doing a feature on neighborhood policing and race," she said. "Would you be willing to talk?" I hesitated. "If I talk, it won't be a puff piece." "That's what I'm hoping for," she said. So we talked. I told her everything about the groceries, the threats, the flyer, the eggs. The article went live 2 days later. When the neighborhood watch is watching the wrong people. A police chief's first-hand account. It was a hit. Shared across social media, picked up by a few local outlets. Even the mayor called again, this time to apologize. Karen, on the other hand, went quiet. The HOA quietly voted to remove her from her position, citing misuse of authority. Brandon disappeared from public view entirely. But I knew it wasn't over. People like Karen don't disappear, they fester. I wasn't celebrating, but I also wasn't moving. 2 months passed. Karen Whitehall had gone quiet, publicly at least. She was no longer running HOA meetings, and Brandon's name hadn't been uttered around the block since the infamous Ring camera footage made him an involuntary meme. Still, I could feel her presence, like the low hum of a bad engine you know is going to sputter out eventually, but not before it wrecks something. I stayed vigilant. Every time I took a walk through the neighborhood, I noticed the way curtains twitched behind windows. Some neighbors had embraced me since the article dropped. Others still didn't know how to act. I didn't mind. I didn't move there to be liked. I moved to breathe. But peace is a way of being temporary. It was a Tuesday when the real storm hit. The sky was cobalt, heavy with summer heat, the kind that made everything feel slow and brittle. I was on my porch sipping iced tea when I got a call from dispatch. "Chief, you better come down to Maple Drive," said the voice. "There's a situation developing." "What kind?" There was a pause. "Your name came up." I was in my cruiser in under 5 minutes. When I pulled onto Maple Drive, I saw the mess. A news van, several patrol cars, a cluster of angry people gathered on the sidewalk outside the Whitehall residence. Karen was in the center of it all, her face red, holding up a crumpled set of papers, shouting into a megaphone. As I approached, I caught the words, "illegally targeted, discriminated against. This is a cover-up." I stepped out and walked calmly toward the chaos. One of the officers on site, Perez, moved toward me. "She's claiming the HOA removal was illegal, that you orchestrated some conspiracy to ruin her reputation. She's calling it a hate crime." "A hate crime?" I asked, incredulous. "She says your influence as police chief created a hostile environment, that you used the media to smear her." I folded my arms. "And what's the actual charge?" "There isn't one," Perez said. "She's just yelling, filming, stirring the pot." The news crew came because she claimed to have new evidence of corruption. Of course. I turned to the crowd. Brandon stood beside her, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes locked on me. Karen saw me, pointed dramatically. "There he is, the tyrant." Some reporters turned, cameras shifting. One approached with a mic. "Chief Anderson, do you have any comment on Ms. Whitehall's accusations?" I sighed. "I've got time for one question," I said. "But first, let me say something on record." The mic moved closer. "My record is public. My service to this town spans decades. If Ms. Whitehall believes she has evidence of misconduct, she's welcome to submit it to the city. But what she's doing now, filing false reports, inciting chaos, misusing public resources, isn't community advocacy. It's a tantrum, one that's now endangering public peace." Karen shrieked. "You see? He's threatening me again. It's intimidation." I looked right at her. "Karen, you've lied. You've falsely called the police. You've weaponized your son, your privilege, and now the media. All because someone said no to your ego." The crowd shifted. Whispers moved through them like wind through leaves. I turned back to the reporter. "Next question." Before anyone could speak, a voice rang out, tired, gravelly. "Actually, I've got one." Everyone turned. A man in a motorized wheelchair rolled forward from the rear of the crowd. Oxygen tank strapped to the side. He wore a veteran's cap and had the bearing of someone who'd seen more than his fair share of battlefields. His name was Mr. Price, lived 2 doors down from Karen. Quiet, mostly kept to himself. Widowed. "What's your question, Mr. Price?" I asked. He looked straight at Karen. You want to talk about intimidation? He said, voice cutting through the noise. Last year, you called the city on me because I painted my ramp without getting HOA approval. You said it made the neighborhood look institutional. You told my granddaughter she couldn't sell lemonade without a permit. You once fined a Harris family because their child's birthday balloons were still on the mailbox the morning after the party. Gasps echoed around us. Mr. Price wasn't done. You bullied every single family on this block for years. You hid it behind rules and decorum, but you never had power. You had fear. And the second someone wasn't afraid of you, someone strong enough to tell you no, you panicked. Karen's mouth worked, but nothing came out. This man right here, he said, pointing at me, is the reason I feel safe on this street again. And if you think you can twist the truth to ruin him, you don't know how tired we all are of your games. Silence fell. Then, like a fuse finally burning out, Karen crumbled. Not dramatically, not with tears or flare, just cracked. She dropped the papers. Her arm with the megaphone sagged. Brandon muttered something under his breath and walked away, whether from her or the crowd, I didn't know. The news crew slowly packed up. I walked over to Mr. Price. Thanks. He waved me off. I didn't say that for you. I said it because this street deserves better. Still, thank you. The next week, I got a call from a legal firm. Karen had filed an official complaint with the city. Discrimination, targeting, moral persecution, she called it. But she'd miscalculated again. The city hired an independent investigator, someone she thought would help her expose me. Instead, they unearthed something else. Turns out, Karen had been embezzling HOA funds for years. Improper use of maintenance fees, vendor kickbacks, and fake repair invoices. The tip came from a resident who'd been silent for years, until they heard Mr. Price speak. Within days, a warrant was issued. When the officers arrived at her home, I didn't go with them. I stayed on my porch and watched quietly as she was let out in cuffs. Not with pleasure, not with vengeance, just quiet closure. Months passed. Fall came. The leaves turned amber and burnt orange, covering the sidewalks with soft crackles. Brandon had moved out. The house stood empty. The HOA had new leadership, less rigid, more neighborly. The kids sold lemonade again. Ramp stayed painted. And me? I kept walking the same streets, same calm pace, same nods to the neighbors. But now, I wasn't just tolerated. I was trusted, not because I yelled the loudest or fought the dirtiest, but because I didn't flinch, because I didn't run, because I stayed.